You come home after a long day at work. You turn on your computer where virtually every cultural and entertainment product human beings have ever produced is one click away. You're hungry, so you take out your phone where food from anywhere in the world can be delivered to your doorstep in a matter of minutes. What do you feel like eating today? Italian? Thai? Ethiopian? You're living in what is by far the most abundant, connected, and comfortable society human beings have ever experienced. And yet, when you lie on your bed awake at night, you have this feeling inside of you that you cannot shake off. The feeling that there's something missing. Something that no experience, no amount of entertainment, no material possession seems to be able to relieve for very long. Welcome to the human experience. If it serves as consolation, you are not alone in feeling this way. This is, in fact, the same thing that 2,500 years ago led Prince Siddhartha to renounce his life of luxury at his father's palace and go looking for answers. Siddhartha called this gnawing sense of dissatisfaction dukkha, and he made it his life's mission to understand and put an end to it. After 6 long years of inner struggle, he finally saw that dukkha is not the inescapable fate of human beings. It is something that has causes and therefore can be overcome. After having this massive insight, and realizing the ending of suffering, he became the Buddha, one who is awake. He then spent 45 years teaching others what he had seen. Like a doctor who prescribes different medicines for different ailments, he taught many different things. Yet there is one teaching that is at the center of everything. It is the single most important thing the Buddha taught to people living ordinary lives in the world. It is a means to alleviate a big part of the suffering we experience in everyday life, and it is the key that unlocks the rest of the Buddha's teachings, the moral precepts. In the words of arguably the most important Buddhist philosopher who ever lived, Nagarjuna, just as the myriad beings possessed of physical form rely upon the earth and abide there, so it is with the moral precepts. They are the dwelling place of all wholesome phenomena. Dispensing with moral precepts and wanting to obtain a good result is like wishing to walk without legs, like wishing to fly without wings, like wishing to cross over a body of water without a boat. However, this teaching is not very popular in the West because we tend to be very suspicious of people telling us what we should do. But this is a deep misunderstanding. I made this video to try to explain what the moral precepts, and more specifically the 5 precepts, really are, and how they are connected to the path that leads to the end of suffering. Watch this video with an open mind, for there can be great benefit in understanding this teaching, which is simple in appearance but profound in reality. The 5 precepts are commitments that Buddhists can optionally make. Although they are encouraged, nobody is forced to take them. Everyone has to decide for themselves. They are not to kill any living beings, not to steal, not to commit sexual misconduct, not to tell lies, and not to consume intoxicants that dull and confuse the mind. The 5 precepts serve as a kind of minimum standard of behavior for living a good life as a human being. But in order to understand this, we need to consider the Buddhist view of the universe. After all, our theory of morality, that is, on how we are supposed to act, is a direct result of our overall view of how things are. Is there a creator God that has set down rules of behavior with punishments and rewards for those who break or abide by them? Or is the universe nothing but a random and ultimately meaningless assortment of particles crashing against one another? Buddhism sits kind of in the middle of these. In Buddhism, there isn't a creator God that functions as a kind of moral arbiter. The functioning of reality is seen as impersonal and objective. However, things do not happen in a random fashion, but according to specific laws of causality. More concretely, any action motivated by greed, anger, or delusion will always result in suffering. And conversely, actions not motivated by greed, anger, and delusion lead to happiness and peace. Or, in the words of the Dhammapada, phenomena are preceded by the mind, ruled by the mind, made of the mind. If you speak or act with a corrupted mind, then suffering follows you as the wheel of the cart, the track of the ox that pulls it. If you speak or act with a calm, bright heart, then happiness follows you, like a shadow that never leaves. Therefore, if what we want is to increase our happiness and decrease our suffering, the most logical course of action is to start really paying attention at the place from which our words and actions are coming from during everyday life. When we notice that greed, aversion, or delusion are coming up, we would try not to follow these impulses, instead making an effort to cultivate words and actions motivated by generosity, kindness, and clear seeing. However, the mind is very subtle and complex, and thoughts and actions arise at different levels of intensity. Both running someone over with my car and having a momentary dislike of them may be motivated by aversion. But clearly the first has a much stronger charge and much more serious consequences than the second. Therefore, it makes sense to start working at the coarsest level and slowly work our way down to the more subtle aspects of our speech and behavior. This is where the 5 precepts come in, because they represent the kind of coarsest level of greed, anger, and delusion. Killing is hatred at its most dramatic, and yes, this includes all conscious living beings. Stealing and cheating on one's partner are greed at its most destructive. Telling lies is usually done out of a selfish motivation to avoid confronting a given situation, so it's either greed for a favorable state or aversion of an unwanted one. And while consuming intoxicants may not necessarily be that destructive per se, if our overall aim is to move in the direction of increased mental and intentional clarity, then it makes sense not to compromise our capacity for lucid decision-making. Furthermore, most of the time, intoxicants are a way of escaping reality and anesthetizing ourselves, instead of developing the skills to deal with life directly. Taking the precepts can be very practical, simply because it's a way to draw a clear boundary. Once a formal commitment to a certain standard has been made, we don't have to think and rely on willpower every single time we are confronted with a dilemma. Lacking a clear standard and relying on willpower alone to guide us every time can be problematic for 2 reasons. One is that things that seem small at the beginning can very quickly snowball and take us down a path that is then very difficult to extract ourselves from. And 2, because the mind is incredibly skillful at making justifications and rationalizing even insane behavior.
Everything that I do, I do it to protect this family.
So in a way, the precepts act as a kind of safety guardrail for our lives that ensures that we are avoiding the worst forms of suffering our behavior could inflict on ourselves. And as well as preventing suffering for ourselves, by taking the precepts, we are also giving a gift to all other living beings who come into contact with us. Or in the words of the Buddha, there is a case where a disciple of the Noble Ones, abandoning the taking of life, abstains from taking life. In doing so, he gives freedom from danger, freedom from animosity, freedom from oppression to limitless numbers of beings. This is the first gift, the first great gift that is unfolded by knowledgeable contemplatives and Brahmins. And the same goes for every other precept. There is a thought experiment that really drives this point home, which is to imagine a world where everyone followed the 5 precepts. In this world, nobody would tell any lies, so we could trust everyone, including our politicians. Nobody would kill one another, so there would be no more wars, murders, or animal cruelty. If nobody stole, this would be the end of corruption. This isn't to suggest this could actually come to pass, but simply to say that within this humblest of teachings lies the power to literally create heaven on earth. Therefore, when I commit to following these precepts in my own life, I am, in a small but very real way, contributing to humanity moving in this direction instead of the other way. Because of the way the mind works, which in Buddhism is called habituation and in modern terms is understood in terms of brain plasticity, when we stop acting on certain impulses, over time they simply stop arising. Therefore, if we keep the precepts for a period of time, we will start to change at a fundamental level. This means that we will no longer have the worst kinds of greed, anger, and delusion as part of our character, and we will slowly but surely move towards a more peaceful and happy existence. If in addition to following the precepts, we also train our minds to become collected and focused, and we investigate the way things are, this becomes a virtuous cycle, which in the Buddhist system is called the Noble Eightfold Path: ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Because our behavior is up to a certain standard, we have a kind of baseline calm, which allows the mind to become more quiet and focused, allowing us to see things more clearly, which in turn allows us to discern at subtler and subtler levels between skillful and unskillful actions. If we continue training in this way, our mental state will keep getting better and better, and while the higher stages of the path are beyond the scope of this video, the important thing to note is that precepts play a key role in this process. In the Buddhist system, no meaningful spiritual development can occur without a solid ethical foundation, and conversely, any true spiritual progress will manifest as an improved ability to make good decisions in practical, everyday affairs. So in conclusion, maybe the most useful way to see the 5 precepts is as an incredibly powerful tool for improving our lives, given by the Buddha directly out of his insight into the path that leads to the end of suffering, and his vision of how reality works. It has nothing to do with moralistic judgment, and there isn't any place for guilt in this system. In the Buddhist view, failing to follow the precepts is kind of like a child putting their hand on a fire. It is sad because they will get burnt by the consequence of their action, but one wouldn't see the child as flawed or evil for doing this, and the proper response wouldn't be to judge or make them feel guilty, but rather to hold them with kindness and compassion, and perhaps to teach them to act in a more skillful way in the future. This also holds true for ourselves. In Western cultures, we tend to be incredibly harsh on ourselves, and we easily get caught in a destructive cycle of unhinged behavior on the one hand, and self-judgment and hatred on the other. The 5 precepts, if properly understood, can function as a practical and sane middle way between these two extremes. But as with the rest of the Buddha's teachings, talking about them is like pointing a finger to the moon. The only way to actually find out whether any of this is true or not is by applying them in our own lives. Then we will actually know for ourselves whether or not they lead to peace, freedom, and joy. Before I go, I just want to say a word about Dharma Realm Buddhist University. If you found this video helpful and you would like to learn more about this and similar topics, definitely check us out. We have an amazing BA program in liberal arts and an MA in Buddhist classics, as well as online classes, events, and lectures. And following the Buddhist principle of generosity, we are committed to having all of our students graduate debt-free. As a special gift for people who watch this video, click the link in the description and we'll send you a free copy of our amazing student magazine. Thank you for watching. May you be happy and free.